Nate, there you are.
Welcome back to Blurry Creatures, everyone out there.
We're here.
I am your co-host, Nate Henry.
And I'd be your other co-host, Luke Rogers. Nate, it's good to see your face, even over Zoom.
Good to see your face.
Good to see you last week. We had tacos.
Yeah, I know.
Always better in person.
Yeah, so today, Luke, what are we talking about? We're bringing back the one and only Fritz Zimmerman.
Right?
He didn't get abducted by the UFO. He's still with us.
But like this is... I think we need to talk to him about that at some point. And possibly in our overtime sessions. We'll do one of our first overtimes tonight.
Okay, there we go. I like that.
You know, Fritz has this crazy story. I think we brought it up since he was on about how he claims he had a time slippage and lost time in this car, right? And that's not what we're talking about with him tonight, obviously, but I want to ask him a bit about that. But Fritz had a new book come out last month, and we'll talk to him about this. I'm sure we'll repeat this information, but it's the Encyclopedia of Fairies, 700 stories, and it's currently out of stock on Amazon. It's a popular book.
So, Fritz kind of blew my mind. He kind of laid the groundwork for our podcast in a lot of ways because as we kept building on with episodes about giants, his was really a foundational, fundamental episode because it really laid out that there's so much mystery in North America even, and things were here long before we've been told. So we know Columbus didn't discover America. It was these giants. They were here long before. Who knows how long they were here.
Deuteronomy 32, possibly, right? Like, or maybe it was in God scattering the nations at the Tower of Babel. I'm not sure which game.
It's hard to know, man.
It's hard to know. It happened, though.
We're 58 episodes in, and we're still rookies. We appreciate you guys listening to our podcast. Last week, we had some crazy numbers with Doug's episode. Some of our best numbers yet. You guys are sharing the podcast, getting it out there. And today, Luke, you mentioned it really quick. We're going to do something for members that we haven't done yet on this show. One of the things is we're going to do bonus time. So Luke and I have found that, the 4-hour, 3-hour, 2-hour long podcasts are a little hard to get out. So if you're a member, you're going to get the full entire episode. So we're going to try to do a bonus time, at least an hour. You don't have to be a member to listen to the hour, but we're going to do bonus time, right, Luke? I want
to make a point though. Like I don't think we're gonna. It's not going to be incomplete episodes necessarily. Just we're going to dive deeper into weirder stuff. I think in an extra 20 minutes to half hour with a guest. And I think that'll be fun, especially when we get on these 3-hour marathons with our friend Tim Alberino.
We're not going to do this all the time, but we feel like it's just an extra bonus perk for being a member, support the show, giving you guys extra content.
Right. And Nate, I think too, one of the things we talked about is quality as well, right? Like the idea that like we want to make sure that everything that we give is, is top shelf A1. We just want to make it valuable, right? We don't want to take your support for granted, and we want to make you feel like you're getting your money's worth. And so I know it's been an 80s references. It's been a cruel summer, but we're thankful for those who stuck with us through this and continue to stick with us. I posted something today, and I don't know how much this is going to end up on the episode, but it is. I want to say happy birthday to G.I. Joe.
Look at this.
September 16th, 1985.
1985.
Heck of a year, man. I know you're a Cobra guy, but that's all right.
Yeah.
That's all right. Someone's got to be a
G.I. Joe. Dude,
I had all of them, man. I had all the figures and like the planes and the tanks, and you take them in the backyard, and then Tonka truck would beat the crap out of it because it's made out of freaking steel that would give you tetanus, but
they don't make those anymore.
They don't make them like that. That's for sure.
Yeah.
I think that's the one I played with is still around somewhere, rusted and giving kids infections. So
those things were so heavy duty, man. I remember going down the hill of my driveway in one of those things.
Oh yeah, you could ride in them,
sitting
dude.
in the back. Yeah.
Yeah.
And it would like cut your legs open, but you'd still keep going.
It was a simpler time, Nathan.
A simpler time. Well, thanks so much, everyone, listening to this podcast over the last couple weeks. It's been a little harder to get out episodes for some personal stuff, but we're working through it. Yeah, we appreciate every single member, everyone who supports the show. You guys are great. It's a lot of work, and it's a lot of, I don't know, Luke, I feel like when you start getting some of these topics and you start really trying to tell the truth, you never know what's going to come after you.
A lot of resistance.
Yeah. And just a lot of pushback. And I think Luke and I didn't realize what we were getting ourselves into this last year. I think we do now. And we like you guys listening and all the messages you've sent us. It's just a really cool community that we're developing here, and everyone's really just awesome. And Fritz is here.
There he is.
The myth, the man, the legend.
The history of our Earth is so different from what we can imagine.
The Smithsonian, that if they found out about a large skeleton somewhere, was to go get it.
I'm going to assume at least one person is right, because if one person's right, it busts the paradigm.
It all goes back to the fallen cherub. And the problem with the modern day church, they have a very truncated view of the supernatural.
This backdrop that's just pregnant with all kinds of meaning associated with this Mount Hermon event.
Welcome to Blurry Creatures.
And this guy defects from the kingdom. That's a big deal.
So, Luke, what are we talking about tonight, Luke? We're getting into it.
Well, Fritz, you have a new book that came out August 13th, and it really perked our interest. And one of our recurring guests here, just Fritz Zimmerman, legend in your own right. You spent years visiting giant mounds, and you created a great expose on that last time we talked. But your new book is the Encyclopedia of Fairies, 700 stories. We would love to start from the beginning, and then just, I know that you equate a lot of what happens to the Book of Enoch, to the Nephilim, to the biblical narrative and the Watchers and fallen angels and that stuff. And with 700 stories from Europe, Iceland, North America, I would love us just to walk through the origins of fairies and what you found, and then maybe some highlights of stories. Maybe just break down what your thoughts on the subject. Give us some nuggets here on Blurry Creatures.
Okay. Well, first of all, it's the Illustrated Encyclopedia of Fairies.
Okay.
They have over 200 images in there.
Wow.
So a lot of the stories will have images included in them. And it's really not that big of a departure from the giants. According to the Book of Enoch, the fairies had allied themselves with Satan, and they were descending, and St. Michael stepped in and said, they're not that bad of guys. And so they were somewhat sentenced to subterranean world. And so they dwell in caves and underground dwellings. But then you have the Tuath Danann that was over in Ireland, and this is just a mythical people. And it's believed that they might have some relationship with the Nephilim, but when they died, there's this supposition that they became fairies.
Oh.
So we have kind of a group of people, this mythical people that are related to the Nephilim, and then we have them as becoming fairies. But then we have fairies on their own with the Book of Enoch, and so there's a lot of different fairies. So it's not Tinkerbell, there's Punkas, and there's all sorts of different types of fairies that are described in the book. So
what would constitute a fairy? Like, what are the character traits that says this is a fairy versus something else?
Well, of course, they're all small, and I don't know, they're just mythical, and sometimes they do good by people. A lot of times they do bad. They steal children, replace them with changelings, which are like these demon babies. And there's a lot of accounts of that. Yeah, it's a real dichotomy between good fairies and bad fairies that would steal people. They thought maybe they were in the cave for like a day, and they would come out and 100 years had passed, and they would go home and everybody was dead.
Wow.
And there's just so many stories and different kinds of fairies. It's really hard to like just wrap it up into, a couple of paragraphs. But definitely, I mean, if you want to know about fairies, this is it. This is just the epitome of stories and legends and everything else that pertains to the subject.
I love it.
So it's funny, Nate, like one of the things that you brought up, Fritz, is that there's these good, sometimes they're benevolent and then sometimes they're bad. And it sounds a lot like when we talk about Bigfoot, right? There's these stories about Bigfoot being saving kids that are drowning out of lakes, and then also you have these, the nasty Bigfoot that steal children, unremarkably the same as we talk about with fairies here. It's interesting. It has like a lot of threads of the Nephilim, right? The Nephilim and their souls were sentenced to be here on Earth. They couldn't go to the afterworld or to the darkness, right? They had to stay here after they died, and it makes you wonder if this is just like a different type of spiritual being, right? We have the cherubim and the seraphim, and then we have the Watchers of Enoch, and we don't know what maybe angel class that was. Maybe it's its own class, and then you have these fairies.
Well, it's interesting when you said they're small, Fritz. Like, how big? A foot? 6 inches? 2 feet?
Yeah, I think anywhere from maybe a foot to 3 feet, somewhere in there.
Is this related to the little people at all?
Oh boy,
there it is.
I was gonna get there, Nate.
Like the spirits of the little people or something?
Well, I'm not sure what you're referring to as the little people.
A lot of people describe these little, literally 2-foot human beings that are often spotted in the woods.
Like the Cherokee little people, and
so I don't know if it relates to that or anything.
Well, the whole thing is that this is all related.
Yeah.
The Nephilim, Bigfoot, fairies, it's all related to one another. See, I believe that Bigfoot is basically an apparition. It's almost like a fairy that can disappear or come and go or be in front of you and then be in back of you.
Yeah.
What you hear a lot of times, when people talk about Bigfoot, it was like, oh, it was behind me, then all of a sudden it was in front of me. So this doesn't sound like anything corporal, like flesh. It's more of a spiritual being, which is why I think, even though we have 10,000 people out there trying to shoot a Bigfoot, they're never going to shoot a Bigfoot because it's a ghost.
And Nate, just like that, Fritz answered the question that we usually ask. And he's already answered it because he's been on before. But like, what is Bigfoot? Yeah. Now, I think that's a fascinating idea because what you're talking about as far as Bigfoot encounters is really right on, right? People talk about raising a shotgun to shoot him and shooting, and then Bigfoot disappears, and he's here, and then he's gone, and then he's there, and then he's not there, and then there's something really crazy going on, and that's why I think people will, and people in the real hardcore Bigfoot communities don't love the spiritual aspect. They want to talk about this flesh and blood. Dr. Jeff Meldrum, it's this, and what is it, Gigantopithecus, and it's an ape, and we just can't find it. I mean, that's all well and good until you have these crazy stories of. And then you go back into the lore too, and you talk with the Native Americans, and they're talking about Bigfoot stealing children, and Bigfoot's this spiritual being this hairy man of the woods that they know is sometimes bad, sometimes good. It just kind of fits all of it, right? And the fairy thing is interesting because, like, when I think about it, I think of like Ireland, right? That's what I kind of think about. It's either Tinkerbell or Ireland. Like, there's this whole fairy thing, and yet you've got 700 stories that aren't just. It's not just a druid, like ancient Celtic Irish, leprechaun fantasy. This is not a phenomenon that's geographically localized, right? Like these are multiple cultures, different cultures, same sort of narrative.
Right. Even here in North America, at Mound State Park, they've been spotted, and I have another site here in northern Indiana. They've been sighted over there. Yeah, it's kind of the subterranean world, but they like mounds.
Oh.
And inhabit mounds. So there's a real connection between burial mounds and the fairies, and they tend to, I don't know, live within inside of them, but they're definitely connected as being part of the burial mound, that there's fairy spirits within those. So you have the Nephilim spirits and you have the fairy spirits, which kind of goes back to the Tuatha Dé Danann, and then they became fairies. And then you wonder, like, well, is that what happened with the Nephilim and the giants? They just turned into this fairy race. You know, what's interesting is over in Coshocton County, Ohio, they found this mass graveyard, and in the graveyard, none of the skeletons were over 3 foot.
Oh.
But they had adult skulls. So they knew they weren't children, but it was all of these little people's skeletons. And there was another case in Tennessee where there was like 500 of them, mass grave, and none of them were over like 2 or 3 foot tall.
That's Nate's love language. You are right. You're right on here. He loves the little people.
Wait, okay, so Fritz, I got a question for you.
All right.
There's a typical Luke always makes fun of me for liking the little people.
This is a really inside joke. It's been going on for a year now about how he
So Fritz,
welcome. You're now in, Fritz. You're in on it.
All right, Fritz. We've all heard the quintessential Bigfoot sighting. Can you surmise the quintessential fairy sighting? Do you know enough to give like a breakdown what that would be?
Well, there's all of these stories in these books about people who talk about encounters with fairies, either coming in, stealing their babies, coming in.
But is it like glowing, like light shooting off of it?
Yeah, is it like is like the orbs and stuff we hear about, or could that be a fairy?
They're actual little people that are running around, you know? I mean, where you can just see it, just this little person, and it comes into your house and it may say, I want milk. And if you don't give it milk, it puts a curse on you or puts a curse on your family. So if you're not nice to them, you know,
give them milk.
There's retribution involved.
Yeah.
And then other people that are nice to them and they end up finding like pots of gold, you know, at their house where they've been repaid. So yeah, there's good stories and there's bad stories, but yeah, to go through, you know, just 700 stories, you know, just compiling all of that, you know, it was just such an array of different things happening to different people. And so, yeah, like I said, it's really kind of hard to surmise and just put a synopsis on all of these stories. Definitely over in Ireland and England and Iceland and Germany has stories. Always interesting because there are always places where there's burial mounds.
Is that what got you interested in this? Because you spent so much time researching the giant mounds in North America, especially. First off, have you had any experiences? And if not, was that a catalyst for you then? Or because those are that connection?
No. I've had no run-ins with fairies, had run-in with ghosts, demons, at mound sites, but nothing with the demons or the fairies. But right now, there's only 2 places that I know. But I know because I'm going to do a new travel guide that I know that they're there, where I didn't know that they were there before. So
in North America here,
yeah.
Where is that? Do you want to share where they have sightings?
Well, the only 2 places is Mountain State Park and another site that I have about 40 miles from here over in Wabash County. So there's not a lot of stories of fairies here in North America, but I think their association with the mounds is that something that's just been neglected somehow, where they were talking more about the mounds, and it doesn't mean that there aren't more fairy stories out there. You know, I have stories of like a cryptid that was at Fort Hill, and this was this thing, and its legs were backwards, and it went running across the road, and the guy that saw it was a military vet. So, I mean, this is a tough guy, didn't believe anything. Scared the shit out of him. Scared the shit out of his wife, too, because the thing just ran across the road. Now, this is at Fort Hill in Ross County, Ohio. So they didn't know what it was, but they made a drawing of it. And it's just like, oh, yeah, there's weird creatures that are involved with these mounds. So every once in a while you'll get a story like that. And I think a lot of the cryptid stories are somewhat associated with fairies and just weird entities that have manifested from this giant race or the
so that's what I was gonna ask, Fritz. So this is good. Like we've talked a bit about mounds. We talked about it with you, and then we talked about it. We had Roger Saker on, he's been on twice now, but he found a serpent mound accidentally on his property in Minnesota, and he talks about the same thing, that there's something with these mounds and the ley lines associated and the energy that's associated with it from the earth and whatever else happened there, the giants especially, that spawns or manifests or provides a portal or one of these things for cryptids, right? He's talking about boar crocs and Nate. What else? I mean, he had Bigfoot experiences. He's all these crazy
dog man,
right?
Yeah.
I mean, so you're a mound expert, and what is it about the mounds exactly?
Are they portals? Are they like magnets?
No, they're portals. See,
so they're coming out of them.
The mound builders believed that the burial mound was a vessel to connect the living with the dead. So they would go to a mound and pray, but they wouldn't pray for their Uncle Roy in there. Once they went into the mound, sometimes there's probably 1,000 people in the mound because they cremated them, built the mounds higher levels and this and that. And so they worshiped this collection of dead, but it was a portal, and it was a portal for those spirits to come and go. Since they were sentenced to earth, the mound is their home. And I think even mounds that have been leveled, I still think there's spiritual activity that's involved with that. So yes, mounds are portals. So, I've always stayed away from any kind of paranormal anything with the mounds, except we did once at Newark, and it was crazy. I mean, it was crazy what
happened? Who tells the story? I want to hear about this.
Yeah, I was with L.A. Marzulli, and he shoots his series. Have you had L.A. on your show?
We have, yeah.
Yeah. So this was kind of my idea, not his, but it's like, look, I got contact with this paranormal group. I called them 2 weeks ago, and if you draw a line, now, Newark, it's a circle and an octagon, and then there's a big circle. But if you draw a circle or a line from the circle to Geller Hill, which is the highest point of land in that whole area, you get a perfect isosceles triangle. The distances are perfect.
That's crazy.
From one to the other. So that points there to Geller Hill. And then there's these kind of mounds. They were plowed over for a while, but there's probably about 10 of them or so. But this paranormal team, they had like all of the gear, right? Like, when you're watching like Ghost Hunters and they have that one thing and it shows the stick figures, that show up.
Yep.
So we're in the woods, and all of a sudden one of these stick figures is like halfway under, like in this tree. And Raylene is one of the girls that was the paranormal investigator. I wouldn't have done this, but she walked like right underneath this thing. And the thing was like patting her on the head. And we're watching this thing on the screen. And it's just like, oh my God, you know?
Wow.
Well, we had that. And then we had another thing. And it's a thing where words come up. So like the first word that came up was witch. And then the second word that came up was Satan. And then the third word that came up was evil. And I'm asking them, it's like, is this normal, you know, for all of these things to be kind of like talking about the same thing of evil and devil? And they're like, no, no, we get words like banana, you know, when we go.
Is that when they record like the frequencies we can't hear, like with a natural?
No, it's just this device. I don't know what it's called, but words show up.
Oh.
So yeah, witch and evil and Satan and devil and all this other stuff was on there. And I'm asking them, like, is this normal? I mean, do you go see paranormal sites and you get to, and they're like, no, this doesn't happen. This is completely out of the normal. Then we got the stick figure thing going on. So LA comes in there, you know, and LA is a minister, and he goes into the woods and he says, I rebuke all of the evil spirits from this world, from these woods, and you are no longer like supposed to be in the woods, and I want you to get out, or something to the effect of that. So the next word on this box of words was holy.
Wow.
And then all the paranormal activity stopped.
Dude, that's wild. And this is on the mound. Wow. This is on the mound, Fritz, right? Like the big mound in Newark.
Well, we were north of that.
The top of the isosceles.
Well, the isosceles triangle goes to Geller Hill, which is this high spot where there's a whole bunch of mounds and burials and stuff.
Yeah.
But, you know, I talked about the math in Newark, you know, the time before. There's isosceles triangles. There's a Pythagorean triangle. If you line it between the mounds, there's a circle that's 700 feet in circumference. And then there's a square that's 925 feet on each side, which equals 3,700 feet. So they would have had to know how to get the circumference of the circle to make the square. And when we were out there, I was out there with LA, he had a surveyor that was coming out, and we were checking the levels of the ditch that went around the big hinge over there, Newark. And I asked him, I said, if you were going to lay this whole thing out, like what mathematics would you have to have? And he said, you would have to have at least basic trig, and you might need a little more advanced trig to lay this whole thing out. Well, did Native Americans know trig? No. They knew they could count to 10,
right? Because
that's all they needed, right? Generally, maybe higher numbers every once in a while,
right?
But they didn't know Pythagorean's theorem. They didn't know trigonometry, and that's how this whole thing is laid out. I mean, the distance between this and this and this and this, and the circle, and then the octagon, and you can put a square in it, and you got a squared circle. So, you know, you had to figure out all that.
I'm so bad at math, so there's no way I'm related to these creatures, Luke.
Well, I have to do a little extra research on my part, because it's like, yeah, I got through algebra to get to college, and I struggled. It was like, I think I took it like my third year. It's like, oh no, I'm going to get outed on my third year of school because I can't get through algebra.
Exactly. So, nothing like a giant's obsession that turns into like a math problem, and you're like, dang it, come on.
I mean, so this is ancient then, right? We're talking like this is ancient. Yeah,
we're talking, 800 BC.
Yeah.
Well, they want to put, the archaeologists want to put everything into a paradigm. So they want the Newark earthworks to be around 200 BC. but they did carbon dating, and it went back to 800 BC. And Lepper, who's the head of the Ohio Historical Society, was a dipshit. He didn't print that because he didn't agree with it.
Oh, of course.
So, we don't agree with that. Well, we can't put that in the paper. So, they stayed at 200 AD on that.
Well, facts.
Well, he's the idiot that said that the Serpent Mound was built by the Fort Ancient people and it was 800 AD, even though there's Adena mounds all around the place. And so he just found some relatively new carbon. So it was going to be his big discovery that Serpent Mound was 800 AD. Well, since then they've debunked that,
Yeah.
But anyway, the guy's always looking for a headline.
Do you think that's just because the narrative is so much more important than facts? It's
to archaeologists it is.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Built by Native Americans. It's like, okay, well, the skeletal material doesn't match Native Americans. And we have all this mathematics going on. And that doesn't match with Native Americans. The sacred geometry on how they were built with circles and squares, and a circle and a square where they're both equal. So you would have had to know how to square a circle. I mean, none of the sacred geometry matches with Native Americans. So what they forgot.
Right.
They just forgot all this high mathematics and decided, Stone Age is where it's supposed to be.
It's crazy that it's just what the funding can do. It can kind of keep the narrative going. So if you picked up a handful of dirt at a mound, is that fairy dust? You know what I mean? Hey.
Boy, I'll tell you what. I don't take anything from a mound site.
Oh, I'm sure.
Not a rock. I had somebody that I took to one of the sites, and anyway, they got a rock, and I go, "Where'd you get that?" And you're like, "Next to that mound," and like, get it out of the car. It's like, no, we don't want to take any of this energy with us,
Yeah, Luke and I went to a mound here in Tennessee at night. We couldn't cross a river to get to it, but I guess you wouldn't advise going to a mound at night, right?
I would like to. I would really like to see more paranormal investigations around mounds, because I think they would find incredible things.
That's what Luke and I thought.
I've heard of shadow people around mounds at night, and nobody goes there at night, but except for what we did, with LA and, doing his video series, that is the only. I've seen a couple paranormal people on YouTube's, but they were hacks, and it didn't really do much. They were there during the day, but they weren't there during the night.
Yeah.
So I would like to see a lot more of that.
So the fairies, to kind of deconstruct our idea of them, they're more like little people. Do they look like people, or do they look like little Bigfoot, or do they look like something else?
Well, some look like people, and then some are somewhat monstrous looking.
So like trolls or like leprechauns or something?
Yeah, trolls, and you got leprechauns, you got these things called the punka, and there's another name for something. I have photos of them. But they're kind of scary looking beings that would scare the hell out of you if you saw one. So it's diverse, they're not just these little people in green vests and that. I mean, it's a pretty wide array of what they look like, and not so much how big they were, because 2 or 3 feet would probably be about right. But I can't discount like some were like a foot high.
Fritz, are there any when you're curating this mass of stories? Are there any or a few that really stuck out to you?
Yeah, what's the highlights?
And the others?
I got to tell you, when you put a book together of this immense size, There's so much reading and editing and sticking them together and putting them in different eras. And of course, I read all the stories, but I can't say that there was one that stuck out because there was somewhat of a similarity in some of them of how you could divide them up. Like you have the Cid, and, these are demonic beings that are inhabiting these mounds. But I thought more kind of the paranormal aspect when they would go into that. I found that interesting because I thought that went more along with the same paradigm of the Nephilim and, their spirits and, what they're doing. But like I said, I think they're all connected.
What about the Tuatha De Danann? Is that how you say that?
Yeah, the Tuatha De Danann.
Danann.
Yeah, they were a mythical group of people that controlled Ireland. There's just a lot of mystery behind them because they were endowed with different abilities, and I just can't help but liken them to Nephilim.
Yeah, because I googled it here, Fritz. It's fascinating. You're right on. It really is Nephilim. It's like this. They were a supernatural race in Irish mythology, and they were the deities, of the Gaelic sort of Celtic, and they were these like demigods that controlled and were worshipped as gods, and sort of were able to do these supernatural things with their powers. And it's just like, man, this sounds so much like the things we read in Enoch and we talk about in Genesis 6 with the Watchers and setting themselves up as gods among the nations, and then having offspring, and then of course, like this is the thread, right? Of course, when these offspring die, then their spirits are cursed to stay here in this place, and that's what you have the demons, right, which are the disembodied spirits of the giants,
right?
And then you have the fairies, which act much in the same way, right? They're these kind of disembodied spirit-ish, but related to it, but also have some sort of definitely like connection to the places that we have. We have the giants and the demonic, you would say, with the disembodied spirits. It's fascinating to me that you find these stories across cultures. And then also you find the same stories essentially across cultures, just a little bit different names, right? You have the Tuatha De Danann, and then you have the sons of God, and the Egyptians call them something different, and the Greek call them something different, but it's all the same thing. It's the same story.
And then you had the Fomorians that were in there, and they were accounted giant. And they came from Carthage, and we know the Amorites were in Carthage. And the name Fomorian, whenever you see, language is a big part of research. And right now, the name of language escapes me. I'm thinking it's etymology, but I might be wrong about that. But Fomorians, you got Moro or Muru. And Muru was the name of the Amorites, who were the accounted giants in the Bible, who were a real tribe. They controlled Babylon from 2000 BC to 1600 BC. If you research, they found tablets from that age, and they were like a workbook, and it was a triangle and shortening it. So it was trigonometry. But they said that the trigonometry that they were using is more advanced than the trigonometry we're using today. And then that goes back to the angels giving these giants the secrets.
Right. And
one of those secrets was math. So it's hard to believe that 2,500 years ago, or not 25, 4,000 years ago, that their mathematics was more advanced than ours. But anyway, that Fomorian is Muru or Amorites, so we know they were over there. Tuatha De Danann were over there. So, everything links back to these giants from the biblical lands that were inhabiting, that area. So,
and what I was reading here is the Tuatha De Danann is saying, and you might be shocked, Fritz, but it says they taught their skills, including sciences, architecture, the arts, magic, and necromancy, to their offspring.
There you go.
I mean, color me shocked. It's the same. Oh, it's the dark arts, guys. It's math, arts, the dark arts, and technology, right? I mean, we talk about, and this is what I think is fascinating for us as we dive back into history. We have a few episodes where we talk about the pyramids. We talk about the things in Peru, these structures that predate all of what we consider more modern, which is actually ancient. And we talk about Easter Island, these places where with the construction and the math and the technology seems so advanced.
Built by redheads.
Easter Island was built by redheads, but so advanced, Nate, that it's been forgotten. The thing we can't figure it out now. Like how do they fit these walls together in Peru? It looks like they melt the rock, or how do they put these black boxes underneath the pyramid in rooms that are just wide enough for them to be there. There's all these crazy things and it makes you think that like perhaps we've forgotten more than we actually know.
We've forgotten.
And I'm trying to think, why does that happen? I think we never broached like how and why does that happen? If we look at our history, did we lose that in the flood? Did it?
Well, we have this like we're getting better idea. Everything's getting better.
It's a bad narrative, yes, because it's not true.
Yeah. Instead of everything's getting worse, everything's a copy of a copy of a copy. The meme of life is getting worse. The original meme was the best meme. So Fritz,
breaking
like
down ancient history and meme terminology, dude.
Oh yeah. It had the best pixelation. You could see everything perfectly. Fritz, like, okay, so these mounds, these portals. What do you think? Can you break down your theory on what happens? Is it like a doorway opens up on top of the mound and things come out of it? Like if you were standing there in the middle of the night, would you see something
step out of nowhere,
like rise out of it? Yeah, or float out above the mound? What do you think?
Well, I know at Grave Creek, which is the largest mound in the whole Ohio Valley, that sits in front of the West Virginia Penitentiary, which is ranked the 4th most haunted place in the country. So that portal, so those spirits that were in the prison, I mean, they got a portal in their front lawn. If you ever go there, it's really amazing because you have this old penitentiary, and then right in front of that is the Grave Creek Mound. But I know shadow people have been seen at night walking around that mound. Now, are those Nephilim? Are those people that were in the prison that were hanged or whatever? We really don't know. But yeah, I think they're all portals. And, the thing about a portal is that once you open the door, it's like people that mess around with Ouija boards. Once you open up the door, yeah, you might be wanting to talk to grandma, but some demon might see that doorway open and come through. So there's been, so many people that have dealt with Ouija boards that all of a sudden they've got an entity in their house, or ghost hunters that go to graveyards and get attachments. And the next thing you know, they've got, paranormal experiences happening in their home. So whenever you deal with, trying to open up that portal, then you don't know what's going to happen. You don't know who's coming through that door.
How do you think those portals get there? Do you think is it desecration of that ground? Is it the?
Well, it was built as a portal.
Oh, okay.
So it is and always has been.
So is it like a ziggurat then, like a mini ziggurat?
Sense.
They're basically trying to essentially bridge the dimensions or bridge the realms or whatever you want, whatever kind of nomenclature you want to give to that.
Somewhat, you're connecting heaven and earth. I've always likened mounds as the impregnated nave of Mother Earth, and those buried within it. And of course, they'd put red ochre and all the stuff on the, on the bodies. was to reconstitute their life, was to make sure that their spirit lived on. But
Fritz, you said something interesting about. Hey, I want to bring this up because we haven't really talked about this at all. In the very beginning, Fritz, you talked about how when they were banished from heaven for essentially siding with Satan, they were intervened for, and so instead of being, I would imagine, being imprisoned in the earth like we see with the Watchers in Enoch, they were sort of allowed to be on the earth in some sort of form or not. But it sounded like they kind of were in the earth. And one thing we haven't talked about, Nate, and we've talked about you and I together, is the idea of a hollow earth and their things. And we talked about it a bit when we had Dark Waters on, and he was talking about things coming out of the earth. How much do you buy that, Fritz? Do you buy that there are things in the earth, that there's spaces where they come out of these?
You're making my mind think like the mounds are kind of like a cheese hole where they can get out of the bottom, right? They can get through. Maybe they come out from underneath.
Yeah.
Through these mounds instead of just coming out of nowhere, some dimension.
Right.
Like the portal's like the mound is sort of like a cave opening, a spiritual cave opening.
Exactly. So you might find, there are a lot of burials in caves, so we would expect to see paranormal activity there. I went to a couple conferences and there were Hollow Earth guys, and I listened to their story and I thought it was pretty much bullshit. So
no Hollow Earth.
I'm not a big Hollow Earth.
Yeah.
Follower.
There's a lot of people out there that talk about that.
I know.
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, I think that.
So I've just pissed off half your audience.
No, I don't know how many Hollow Earthers we have. I don't think, because we never really talked about it. But it's interesting to hear those, because things start buzzing. You're like, okay, if you were sort of condemned or allowed or whatever you want the terminology to be within the earth, and that could be caves, right? I mean, we talk about in ancient thinking too, caves are portals to the underworld, right? So there's this thought process, understanding that you could somehow reach the underworld, which was inside of the earth, through these caves. I mean, we talk about the one at Mount Hermon all the time. There's the gates of Hades or gates of hell. Jesus references it in the Gospels, and it's interesting. I know it's one of those caveats, and so I just want to bring that up because I didn't.
Well, the word they use with the Nephilim and the fairies is earthbound. So I think you need to keep that in context. So earthbound, then they gravitate towards the mounds and in caves and in different things. But never does it say like the underworld.
Sure.
Like, I don't believe there's groups of fairies living 100 miles in granite.
Right.
In the earth.
What if there's what if there's a tube though? They can go down the tube. You got to think.
Well, no, if you got a tube, that is a completely different story. If you got a tube that goes down to the granite, maybe some fairies are
maybe they're down there. Yeah, you just got to open your mind a little bit, maybe,
But you need a big flashlight and look down there and see if you see anything moving around.
So I got to ask you then. I mean, like the big question. You compile this book. Do you believe fairies are still around? Do you believe people are still having experiences? Do you believe in this stuff?
I do, because I believe in the paranormal, and I believe they're an aspect of paranormal.
Probably should have asked that at the beginning, Fritz. I apologize. We could have been like, I don't really believe in this, but let's just talk about the book here.
But I think they can appear and disappear, and I think they're more ghost-like than just this entity that is just 24 hours a day. I think they can manifest and then disappear, and then whatever realm that they live in, which is kind of hard to describe because they describe different places where they live. People would go by a cave or something and they would say, stay away from that cave, there's fairies in there. don't go near it. And then somebody would go near it, and then, you know, all hell would break loose.
Go disappearing.
So yeah, there was people that lived in those areas, and they kind of knew where the fairies lived, and it was just like, stay away, you know. This area over here is bad news, you know.
Well, do you think that's related to like the missing 411 phenomenon? People going missing in state and local, like national parks, state parks, thousands of people go missing without a trace. I think the fairies could be behind that.
Yeah, because I think there's a relationship between Bigfoot and the fairies, and yeah, maybe some of these people will emerge in 100 years.
That'd be crazy.
Really?
I mean, it's possible.
That's like Flight of the Navigator.
Yeah,
Luke.
dude, that's like Rip Van Winkle. wake up 100 years later. So, so you compile these stories, Fritz. Do you think they're good or evil or both or ambivalent?
Both. Some are evil. I would say 75% evil, 25% good.
Oh, there's that math again. Sacred geometry.
Sacred geometry right there.
Yeah.
I mean, if it was 66.6%, I'd be like, we're doing something weird here.
Yeah. I wouldn't do that to you. We'd get sideways quick, huh?
Fritz always brings it back to the math.
That's right.
So 25%, why? Why 25% good?
Oh, 25% of the stories are good, and you hear of somebody and they did something nice for a fairy and they got a pot of gold, or help some guy out in his farm or something like that. But most of the stories are bad, you know. They're not something you wanted to miss left. It's something you wanted to get rid of.
And fairies are all in rural places. They're not like showing up in the city, knocking on doors.
No, it had no big city fairies. It's all kind of in the in the lands of Ireland and England, you know, where it was remote. And, you know, a lot of these stories are written, you know, 150 years ago. And things weren't built up, and
the fairies like country living. I mean, there's nothing wrong with that.
Yeah, downtown London. Yeah, they stay away.
Yeah, they're not city. They're not city folks.
Stay
like
away.
Those pubs.
Stay away from there.
Interesting. So, do you think they're like within, you know, earshot of a mound and somewhere they can come out and go back in, or?
Yeah, I would say they're at the mound. At the mound, are really, really close. Well, like I said, we need paranormal investigators to check some of this out, and nobody has. So
there we go, Luke.
There's a call, right? It's like the call of the wild. I'm hearing it.
So Fritz, we went to a mound at night, but there was a lake, and we didn't have a boat to get across. But we're going to go to one here.
The mound in Tennessee, that's Etowah, isn't it? Or is that in Georgia?
There's one in Nashville.
What's it called? Mound.
Is that the Pinson Mounds?
Have you been there?
Is that the one you were trying to go to?
No. We were trying to go to...
No, there's mounds even closer.
Mound Bottom State Archaeological Area, Kingston Springs. That's where we went.
Yeah.
It's like a big old mound on a river bend.
Kingston Springs, there's a mound, Tennessee.
Yeah, because you got to watch, like, place like the Pinson Mounds and that. Those were platforms, and the king lived on top, and there's no burials in them. So there's probably people buried around it, but I mean, those were not burial mounds. It's where the king lived on top, you know, for his house.
I wonder if the mound bottom where we're at is anything, because Nate and I were trying to get there and, you know, see what we could find, kind of trouble we could get ourselves into, and try not to get shot at night going across people's property. So
no, there's several mounds bottom. It looks like there's it's called Mound Bottom State Park. There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 mounds there, and it's around a river bend. The Harpeth River kind of runs around 3 parts of it, and you have to take a boat across to get there.
There's a whole lot of propaganda out there too about how the Native Americans built it, and
Same old story, Fritz.
Yeah, you get down into Tennessee, and then because the Nephilim were in the Ohio Valley, and
Were they there Fritz, were they there to mine copper and stuff? Was that why they were in Ohio?
well, they came here probably more around 2500 BC, right in the middle of the Middle Bronze Age. And their first thing that they were doing was mining the copper. So it wasn't until around 1600 BC when you had the Hittites were moving south, you had the Egyptians moving north, and the Amorites just basically got squeezed out. Of course, there's a biblical story, of Joshua coming in and slaughtering all of them. Of course, he didn't kill all of them, and a lot of them were just, they saw the writing on the wall. It's like, we got to get out of here. Of course, they had outposts in England and North America, so they moved, they moved into England and then eventually came over here. I think they left England mainly because the Celts were moving in. So they kind of got squeezed out of there, which pushed the remainder of them over here into North America. But it's interesting, they started out in the East. So like when they were mining the copper out of Isle Royale and up around Wisconsin, that is about the same time as America's Stonehenge. And that is one remarkable place.
What happened there?
Huge monolithic stones that are aligned to the solstices. And there's some things I can't give away because it's L.A. Marzulli's material. But if you draw a line of the summer solstice sunset from America's Stonehenge, you would not believe what L.A. Marzulli found. And that's in his video series. And it is remarkable. Absolutely remarkable. Probably one of the greatest archaeological finds of the century is on his videos.
Wow.
And I think that one's on, I think it's American Stonehenge. I think it is. Mysteries of the Mound Builders, L.A. Marzulli. But what he found in conjunction with America's Stonehenge, like I said, probably one of the greatest archaeological discoveries of this era. Almost, it's too incredible to even believe. But I can't go into any specifics because, we all got to stick together, and we don't.
100%. What about the hinges?
Giveaway.
Fritz, what's the significance of the hinges in the relation to the mounds? Because we find those. I mean, there's Stonehenge, and there's hinges. There's the giant's wheel, and there's Stonehenge is not a standalone significant as opposed in the context of hinges. This was something that was built, right? Like, why were they?
Well, it was.
What were these about? Why are they building them, and how do they relate to the mounds?
Well, it was built by the Amorites when they were in England. And, all right, Stonehenge, you think of the stones, right? But around that is an earthwork, a big ditch, and it has an outer wall and it has a gateway. And the gateway is aligned to the summer solstice sunset or sunrise. And most of the hinges, so a hinge is a circular earthwork, outer wall, gateway aligned to a solar event. So we have those in Germany, and then of course we have identical hinges from England Ohio, you couldn't tell the difference. And then the hinges over here in North America, most of those are aligned to solar events as well. So how strange that you have.
Yeah, because they're all matched, and we're talking like it's the same peoples or same knowledge group of peoples, right? We assume would be like the Amorites and the
solar
tribes.
Calendars.
Okay.
Solar, not so much lunar. There is some lunar in some of them, but alignment to stars. But generally, they were solar temples.
So is this is Apollyon worship? This is like the sun god, whatever you want to call him. Is this a
oh yeah.
Yeah.
December 22nd, the day is at its shortest, but after that, so December 22nd is the solstice, but then the sun stays there for 3 days. After 3 days, it begins moving back to the south. So the sun god is reborn, just like Jesus died 3 days, reborn after the third day. Yeah, what's interesting is that a lot of these hinges, the gateways are always 33 feet. Always 33 feet. Always 33 feet. Always 33 feet.
That's weird.
Yeah, and people go like, oh, feet. Well, they weren't using feet. Well, there was an MIT professor who said that during the era of the Amorites that they were using, because they used a 12-point numerical system, that their foot was identical to ours.
Huh.
Which is the only way you could have hinges that are 666 feet, 660, squares, which was a Babylonian number for the earth. And then you have squares that are 1080 on each side. I mean, there's just no way none of this happened without it just being, they're using the same,
Same, yeah. They're using the same system.
Matrix.
Yeah, the same system.
33 is the square root, I believe, of 1080. Of course, 1080 is the Earth Mother. But here you have a gateway, 33 feet. Who's the gateway to heaven? Christ. When does he die? 33. There's a lot of connections.
Oh, and there's 33 degrees in the masonry as well. It's also kind of a weird thing.
The 33 degrees in masonry.
Yeah.
And what are they? Total believers in the Nephilim.
Yeah, they are. And they're believing in
Solomon's temple and everything Nephilim.
Right, and they claim to have their sacred knowledge that was passed down from who we find to be, or at least of legend, is at least a demigod, right? It's one of these perhaps fallen entities, which is, it's all crazy how it's all, you can talk about semantics and things. People will call things different things, but really we're finding it's the same story, right? It's the same story told a little bit different, but with different names, but it's the same idea, right? We're talking, which is fascinating, right? I mean, if you follow the biblical narrative, we talk about how it wasn't until the Tower of Babel that the nations were spread apart. So at one point, everybody was telling the same oral history and had the same stories and fell into the same belief systems, and they knew all of this stuff, and they just went different places, which I think is why
all of a sudden, just like boom,
different place,
high math, building, all this happened all at once.
Like the Beckley Tepe, right? That's one of the great examples of their way. And how do we have an agrarian society pop up out of nowhere almost instantly when everyone's supposed to be hunter gatherers?
I was praying for that in math class. It never happened.
Like give me that download,
yeah. So how do we go from barely able to feed your family, just the beginnings of this agrarian society? cities are just starting to be built, and then all of a sudden, this explosion of ziggurats and pyramids and and all this stuff that is of just such a higher order than they were 200 years ago, unless somebody gave somebody something.
Yeah, unless some crazy switch, right, Fritz? Like,
yeah, so you can say, and I've talked to a couple of UFO groups, and they say, well, you say fallen angels, and I say, yeah, fallen angels came from the sky, and it's just like, well, could they be UFOs? And be like, yeah, why not?
Yeah, we got to talk about that.
Well,
Fritz.
I wanted to say that these earthworks in Ohio like the octagon and the circle, there is an 18-hole golf course in the middle of this thing.
Yeah, we talked about that, I think.
Right. That's how big it is. And you've got these lines of the octagon, and every one of the lines is lined to minimum moon set, maximum moon set, intermediate moon set. I mean, there's like 8 of them. And you got these things. It's like, how did they check their work? And when you look at the ground, you can't tell what it is. You would never be able to say that's an octagon by just going there. You could see a couple of the walls, but then you look way far in the distance and you see, it's like, how did they check their work? I mean, how did they know exactly how to make this? And why did they make all of these earthworks that are all massive, perfectly geometric, perfect, and you can only see them from the sky?
It's crazy.
Yeah. Yeah, we'd love to get into that, Fritz. Do you want to do some overtime for members and we can keep talking? It's up to you if you want to keep going.
Yeah, we can go a few more minutes.
Sure.
Okay.
Well, Fritz, we can't thank you enough for your time, and just great. It's great to see you, and great to get to talk to you again.
You guys too.
Let us know if you get abducted again. We want to have one of the first rights to your story.
I think LA will steal that one, Luke.
Oh, well, okay. Well, we'll second to LA then.
I'm writing a new travel guide, so abduction is a total possibility.
Well, that's great. All right, let us know if you come back. We'll be waiting in line.
Well, I do, and if I have any recollection for it, which they blank your memory.
Yeah.
So I'm not going to know if I've been probed or not.
You got to strap a GoProbe on you.
You just got to wear your body cam, just so you can review it.
GoProbe.
Oh, look, Nate's got dad jokes.
Oh, the GoPro. Oh, God. That is.
It's bad, Nate. It's bad. It's not.
Hey,
it's
yeah.
not
dad
your
jokes.
best work. Not your best work.
Oh my God.
Don't Google that, Fritz.
when dad jokes go too far.
That's right.
Yeah, Fritz. Thanks.
Google GoPro. See what comes up.
Yeah, don't do that.
No. It's
not
funny
suitable,
how
not at work either.
Like you said, Fritz, it can all go bad in 15 minutes, and look where we are. There it is. So we've learned everything, Luke. We started out this episode talking about Tonka trucks, and then Fritz dumped on us how much earth those trucks would have to have carried.
That's a good point.
To make those mounds. So everything comes full circle on Blurry Creatures. Thanks for your time, Fritz, and congrats on your new book. And go out and buy it, guys.
Go get that book.
Well, I'm hoping this does well because there's stories books, but there's nothing like this. 530 pages.
Wow.
Now, the Encyclopedia of Ancient Giants had 520 pages, and I documented 700 giants, and this has 700 stories. How crazy is that?
I was telling Nate before the episode that you must have something for that number.
When you get to 700, it's time to call it quits.
It's time to call it quits. We've done enough. Our work here is done.
That's where we're at with Blurry Creatures. Once we get to 700 episodes, Fritz.
That will be in the year what?
2025.
Sometime after the rapture.
Yeah, well, we'll let you know, Fritz, if Blurry Creatures just goes silent one day. We went to that mound and we didn't come back. So
yeah, we walked in that portal.
Well, you're gonna have to keep me abreast on your investigation, and if I was you guys, I would take some paranormal people with me.
All right. We need to do it.
But make sure they're good, that they got all the stuff, all the equipment.
Yeah.
I mean, there's some paranormal people that all they have is a recorder and a $12 EVP or whatever that thing that has.
Yeah, we're not doing that, Fritz. This is we're classy. This is Blurry Creatures.
We're 80s show, so Luke's gonna just put on his.
We got $13 recorders.
No, we're just gonna go out there with those 3D vision glasses from the 80s. See what we can see. That's it. The paper ones, Luke, remember the paper ones?
Oh yeah, I love those. I wear them when I drive.
When I was 11 years old, I had.
Hey, thanks for tuning into this week's episode. Hope you enjoyed it, our conversation with Fritz. One of the things we've been running into is getting bonus content with guests. It's hard because we don't want to put, authors and doctors behind a paywall. But what we can do is record the extra long conversation. So if you enjoyed this conversation with Fritz and you want to hear the next hour, he was gracious enough to record another hour with us, and we went into detail about UFOs and other stuff. So one of the ways we're going to reward members and you guys is doing the long episodes on the back end of the site. So if you want to become a member and support our show and help us produce more content and get access to extra long interviews, go to blurrycreatures.com/members, become a member, and enjoy the full conversation. Thanks so much.
Next thing I see, my dad walking across lawns, and he's madder than hell. Well, that was it for the 3D glasses.
Yeah, those. That's amazing.
And they don't work.
Yeah.
And they don't work. It was like the time machine in Napoleon Dynamite.
Yeah.
they don't work.
I like Bill and Ted, where that time machine works.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, we love it, Fritz.
I love it,
Thanks,
Fritz. Thanks
buddy.
again, man.
That was good. We got off a little off topic this time.
It's all right.
But that's
Fun.
okay.
Yeah, it was fun. We like that. We let it go where it goes,
Yeah. Hope your listeners enjoyed that. Encourage them, buy the Giants book and buy the Fairies book. And I really think this is going to congeal into a world that you just did not know existed. So
awesome.
Yeah. Buy the Fairies, buy the encyclopedia. And that is one hell of a 1-2 punch.
Oh, yeah.
Right there.
Sure is.
Thanks, Fritz.
Yeah, thanks, Fritz.
All right, guys. I guess we've been on here for, we've been on here for almost 2 hours.
Oh, we have.
Appreciate it.
We got time slippage. We didn't go anywhere. just like your drive.
There you go.
Yep.
Lost
there
time.
We go. It's all a circle. Here we are.
Lights overhead. Watch out.
Okay, GoPro.
Well, thanks, Fritz.
All right.
GoPro.
I'll see you guys.
Get that GoPro. See you, Fritz.
All right.